Good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another session from THiNC Institute of Design. So as promised, in this session, we will be discussing about the questions that has been asked for the last 2 days. As most of you are aware, the situation test for NIFT entrance exams is going on, and it's after 2 years that NIFT has finally come up again or reintroduced the situation test. So in this session, we have our own faculty, Nandini, who has been taking sessions for students who are preparing for the NIFT sessions. In the last couple of weeks, our batches, she was handling it. So we just thought that we could give you a glimpse of these questions and what could be the possible ways in which you can ideate and things like that. So the session is open for everyone. We would love to hear what exactly are your questions, queries and all. Whatever questions, queries you have, please do not hesitate, shoot it up in the live chat box and we'll have a healthy discussion. So without any delay, I'm taking this over to Nandini. Nandini, the stage is all yours. Welcome.
Hello everyone, really nice to be with you all again in this platform. So today we'll be discussing the past few days paper and we'll just go through them, try to decipher what they mean and how you can approach these questions, because so far the questions have not broken any kind of pattern. If you look at the past year's paper also, it's kind of similar, so it's around the same pattern, so there's nothing that's extravagantly new, and it's something that we can tackle. So we'll go a little into it, but before I start, I'd like to tell you guys that this presentation is not going to be about me sharing a few models or a few templates that you guys can work on, or I'm not going to show something and y'all are not going to go and make the exact same thing there, because the problem with that is I know everyone has a tendency to do so, because sometimes you see a work and then you do get inspired, but there is a difference between getting inspired and then just straight up putting the same thing there. What happens is you become mediocre, and because obviously when there's something out there, there'll be a bunch of kids that copy it and keep it there. So if you're one of the 400 kids that do that, you'll just be grouped into that, and then it's not going to make you stand out. Our goal here is to stand out and make the judges or make the examiners like see you in the spotlight and be like, okay, this is one person that we are going to pick from a sea of so many students because you are special. So if you want that happening to you, and that is exactly our goal here, then let's just use the thinking and let's just use the things I say as a thought process and as something to approach the question, as an approach methodology, and that will help you more rather than just looking at it as, okay, maybe we will get some models to refer to, because I just want to put it out there before we dive in, because this is going to be quite an interesting session, because mainly we are going to focus on how to approach, decipher, break down and think about creating the model, because that is what really, that is like the initial stage. But if you get that nailed down, that really is what makes the big difference between an average model and a rank holders model, the thinking. And what backs up that thinking and your model is your writing. So we'll talk about all of that in this session. Okay, so diving in on 3rd April of this year, we got the first question. I'll just read it out again. Footwear for Met Gala for a female celebrity with a theme. Answer any one from the given option: floral, retro, and ethnic. So that is the first question. And the second question is 3D design. Answer any one from the given: air, maternal, love, and generosity. So let's look at the first question. So over here we have a setting that is a Met Gala, and we have a specific type of person that we are catering our design for, a specific type of client or user. So that is the female celebrity, and then we have a specific theme that we stick to, and that you can choose from 3 aesthetics: floral, retro, and ethnic. So looking a little deeper into this, the Met Gala is like an event filled with glam. There's a lot of jazz, and mostly it is something where there is a red carpet and your shoes like stick out. So that is something you can think of, not just in terms of ideation, but also in terms of presentation. It should be something that, your first thing that you think should be that the final product should be loud, should be very pop, should be very, very glamorous. And it sounds a little, it should be very bold. So you cannot go for those subtle designs. You can go elegant, but things that won't work here are a little office type or a little official, I mean, little pastel colors, little subtle. What works here are frills, loud designs, prints, just anything loud. Stilettos work here because again we're catering for the female audience. So that is something that you can look for. And a little detail that I noticed here, that they said it's a Met Gala. So it's like a red carpet event. So maybe once you're done with the model, if you have some red paper, you can present it nicely as the base can be red or something. This is how you should think. And this is how you should approach this question. So moving on to the aesthetics. So they've mentioned three themes that you can pick from. One is ethnic, one is retro, and one is floral. So when you go for ethnic, or any kind of aesthetic, let's look at the overall first. You create, usually if it's like, if you're in a design studio and if you're a designer and you've been given a type of like, a theme or an aesthetic, you usually develop a mood board. And sometimes you pick inspirations from that, sometimes you pick color schemes from that, sometimes you get inspired by the form, aesthetics, something. But because we are in an examination center, we cannot really sit and make a mood board on Illustrator, but let's always have that mood board mentality in the back of our brains, and that really helps. So when you're thinking Indian or ethnic, usually in this Indian setting, you'll think Indian, but ethnic is a much broader term. It just means anything that is indigenous. But let's just keep it narrow for this context. If you're thinking Indian, there's a lot of colors, there's a lot of tradition, there's a lot of prints. Sometimes there's indigo, and there's, just think about like Jaipur or like those amazing places with a lot of, indigenous culture, and think about hand looms, think about weaving. There's a lot of beautiful things that you can pick up, motifs. So these are like a lot of little things that you can add as elements to whatever you're creating. Maybe it's a form inspiration. Maybe it's something like a motif that you add to your form, something like that. But this is how you start thinking. Or like, let's look at the next one, retro, right? So one really cool series that I love the aesthetic, it's very retro, is Riverdale. So if you all have watched it, it's pretty cool, right? They have like that very bold red, or like all those LED lights, the way they use it and all of that. So that is something that you could go for. Or something like a vinyl, or so those little elements. Or like floral, if you're looking at the third one, this is like, I guess, the easiest. But again, guys, when it comes to something that's easy, you have a tendency to become mediocre. So I don't want you creating a footwear with just flowers on. Okay, that's just too basic. So you should, when it comes to something easy, it's easy to like come up with something, but it's hard to stick out from the crowd. So it's always better to ideate a little more. Okay, maybe if you're going for floral, maybe it's just the color palette that's floral, or maybe it's like something very, very abstract about it that's floral. So you'll like kind of stick out from the crowd. Okay, so this is how you should like think. And because we don't have the luxury in an exam hall to create like a proper mood board, maybe you could just jot down points, keyword mapping, it's a very helpful thing. So those things help in an exam hall, because time is important, speed is important. But if your ideation is not on point, then it's very reflective and visible in your final model. And speaking of going from an idea, putting your headspace into that particular theme, and then, you know, um, translating it into a product, let's talk about like quick sketches. Okay, so these are just a few sketches from a few famous designers. And what I want to see, what I want you to see is these were actually designed for the Met Gala. So if you see, they're quite loud. Some are like quite bold. These have feathers and like a lot of embellishments. These can be easily created by, you know, quilling paper. These can be cut paper. It's very easy, and maybe the base can be made up of cardboard. You know, you could think in different ways. This is also, I think, a themed piece where like it's for Met Gala celebrity who's super excited to share their status on Instagram. So it's kind of inspired by that. So this is kind of like a good example of how you can inculcate a theme into your piece. So once you're done with the sketches, one thing is that kind of it kind of gives you an idea. It's like a plan, like, okay, this is what I'm going to make. Kind of, it doesn't have to be such a fancy sketch with coloring and everything. Okay, it could be just a quick sketch, like don't take more than a minute for it. But then the whole point is like, if you're designing like a product or something, a sketch really helps you decide the form, the shape. It's like a plan of action. Like over here, this is there, so this needs to be sturdy, because I mean, look at that. So maybe I should use like thick card or cardboard for that. I definitely need glue here, I need thin strips of paper here. So it really helps you plan out and pace out things. And another thing it helps you with is, if you do a sketch and it looks something like this, you realize that this is a little too ambitious, maybe I could just cut it down halfway. Or, you know, you get my point. So it really gets you thinking about the scope of things also, and how you can kind of time manage yourself to finishing the entire thing, making the concept, and also finding time to write the write up, because that conveys, that just kind of like, that is like the limelight. If your product is there and it's on like a stage, your write up is like the limelight that is shown at it, you know. So if you shine it nicely, it is going to make all the difference. That is like one thing that is very important. And I've seen a lot of students spend like the last minute doing the write up. I don't want you guys doing that. All right. So this planning, sketching, and all of that, and ideating properly really helps you like build that, you know, so that you can plan and you do have time to write, because it really does make all the difference. So these are just a few very simple paper prototypes. This is just for me to show you guys that something like a shoe or footwear that is like a 3D complex structure can be achieved in a few basic steps. Okay, so this is just for reference, just to show you guys that like there can be a lot of explorations that can be done. So let's talk about material. All right, so when it comes to material, usually in a NIFT situation test, they give you sometimes fabric, sometimes papers, cardboards, different thicknesses of papers. So this is something that you can really take to your advantage. Don't ever get tensed out like, oh my god, there's a lot of materials, I have to use all of them. I don't really think that is a rule, so let's not assume that. Rather, they usually judge you based on how well you pick a material, rather than have you used all the material. I hope I'm making myself clear. But the thing over here, the whole point over here is that you have to, like, for example, right, if you're creating footwear, you want the base to be sturdy. So you always use something like cardboard or a sturdy material to create the sole. And for one of my exams, when I was attempting, what I did is I removed the top layer of the cardboard. So I had that kind of perforation texture, and it was like a really nice imitation of the sole of the shoe. So, you know, you guys could experiment like that also. So moving on, this is another very interesting form exploration that I found, and I really wanted to add it here to show that, you know, it's not just the type of material you use, you also learn the property of material. So over here, whoever's created this has understood that paper is thin but malleable and flimsy. So they've used this property to create this kind of interesting dynamic form to it. So you can always manipulate your material in a good way to, like, work with it. So this is something that really keeps you aside from the crowd and make you look like someone who knows what they're doing. All right, so these are just a few more explorations to just show you what what level you can go to with just paper. And mind me, they're going to give you more than paper, so it's going to be like a very fun activity. Just make sure that you plan, pace yourself out, and make sure that you have enough time to do the write up. And because this was like a very simple product design activity, your write up will consist mainly of what who you're catering it to, the form, the shape, the practicality, if you want to talk about it, and your choice of material, because it's more of like a utility based assignment. But also, if you do use colors, like you can talk about how you use red, and how that is like uh, you know color psychology, how it's associated with glamour because it's a Met Gala. So that's something you can always add, that'll kind of bring another layer to what you thought and like how you ideated, and that really sets you apart. So moving on to the second part, that was 3D design. And they just call it 3D design. So anything under the roof, anything under the sun of installation, anything that pops, anything that's stable, balanced, comes under 3D design. So like a few things you have to keep in mind is that it should be something that's stable. So it shouldn't be like a house of cards, and I've told this to like a lot of people before also, because sometimes when I see the model, it's like by the time I reach the model, it's collapsing. So we really don't want that. We really don't want those shaky things also. It should be quite solid. So that is the number one I mean basic rule for anything that is a 3D design. So first option was air. So this was a little open ended. Okay, even like when I saw this, I was like, okay, there's a lot of ways you can even perceive air, like to even communicate or build something on top of it. So air could be anything from something that's light, something that's moving, something that's transparent, or even like as an element, like so there's a lot of things that air means, and it could even be like even certain products, or in that sense also, or something light like symbolic like a cushion. So this is quite open ended, and usually they do have like NIFT questions have like two sides to it. Some of them are like quite direct, like product design and all, like shoe design, headgear design, and all of that. It's quite interesting to work with. But also they have like this other bizarre set of questions that are extremely open ended. So what happens here is it's a little challenging compared to the direct questions, but it also has a lot of space for creativity and setting yourself apart from the crowd. So that is why, like, if you are confident and if you are strong in your writing part, this is like really good for you, because this these kind of questions can be filled with symbolism, filled with color psychology, filled with form psychology, filled with little elements where you can talk and talk and talk and just impress these people. But in the end, your model should be good. Okay, so this is like, if you're like good at writing also, and if you're like a little bit of a creative writing person also, but also like a little poetic in nature, then like this is really cool. So one way to break down open-ended questions, especially because that word can mean like several things, is keyword mapping. So for air, what basically you do is anything that comes under the roof, like on your head spontaneously, when you think about air, you just quickly like draw an arrow from, just write air in the middle of like a rough sheet, and then draw an arrow from that, write it. So it's like air, arrow, pillow, air, light. Next would be air, transparent, air, wind, air, flowy, things like that. So you get like tons of more backup words or backup concepts and ideas through which you can build these concepts. And maybe you could build a story around it. Maybe it's a scene you saw in a movie. There's there's like a million possibilities. So you just have to be careful of like understanding what materials you have in front of you, what words you have in front of you, what concept you can build, and then look at how much time you have and be a little realistic about it. So if you can do that, that is like the best thing, guys. And also look at certain things like the color scheme and all of that when you're working with a 3D design model, because I've seen people go bonkers with the colors because they really give out very bright sheets, in these situation tests. I've noticed because that is what's available in the market. But usually, most times, what happens is like these students, some of them, they use these papers without any sense of color, and it makes the model look very bad. So when you're picking out sheets, also, you can always eliminate sheets that don't fit in a particular color scheme, or you can use less of that and draw more emphasis into what color you're using, especially if it's something symbolic or aesthetic or has a purpose to it. All right, so this is a very big installation, but this is just for me to show you how your thinking should go when it's like an open-ended question. It should be something that's different and impressive, and it should have some sort of thought behind it. Okay, so over here, space is like space and gravity. Also, there's like space and weight. There's a lot of physics in this, so I really like this installation. And most importantly, even if the form is simple, I do not recommend you guys making like a simple form like this, please, because this is a situation test. They are going to judge you based on your skills, but I'm just showing you that okay, I like how this person was thinking. Okay, but please, this is a skill based thing, skill based exam. So make sure that you do show some portfolio of your skills in your model. Okay, so this is something that you can write about a lot. Next one, so this is again something quite interesting, and there is a good set of skills shown, even though I wouldn't say that it's completely three-dimensional. But for the topic of air, I found this quite cool. Yeah, moving on. I mean, it's not exactly air, it is wind, but like I really like how there are tiny humans in it. So it's like there's a lot you can talk about. It could be very metaphorical. You can go deep into poetry with this, and it's quite cool. Even the choice of color, it's quite minimal, but it's stuck to a particular color scheme. But again, each color you can, there is something to say, you know how white is like symbolizing lightness or things like that. You can just go on with this. But what I'm showing you here is not the model. Again, I'm telling you guys, I am just showing you the thought process behind it and how you should approach this question. I think the next one was a 3D model representing maternal love. So this again, it was quite abstract, but there are certain things like that kind of could confuse people. But one thing I can tell you is if you pick this, it's more, the whole game changes. It's more of a how not to become one in the crowd and how to stick out kind of thing, because 90% of the people will just make like a mother and a child, like some sort of sculpture or something like that. So maybe, I over here I'll just talk about how to break free from that. Maybe you could use free forms like I've shown in the extreme light, right? Okay, maybe you could explore that. Maybe you could explore abstract. Maybe you could explore symbolism. Okay, that is the first and the second image. And in the first one, there is a little bit of color psychology. So how there's like a pink um, cradle, and how you can talk about how pink represents love, or like how the mother is like loving the daughter because it's pink. Again, it's a little biased, but you could always talk about that. or it's just like you see this and then you just think of like a baby and a mother, right? So that this is just something to show like, okay, this is how you think. Or maybe like a flower that's blossoming. Okay, this is something that's very easy to create on paper also. That's why I just added this. This itself wouldn't be a model, but like this could be something you add to your model as an element, so that it adds some sort of three-dimensionality to it and you can talk about it too. Because your model is not one thing. Your model is going to have certain elements or aspects to it, so you can always add certain motives or certain things that symbolize certain things in terms of the concept, so you can back your story up even more. Because when you talk about open-ended things like maternal love, first off, this is not a drawing exercise, so we are actually limited. Second off, this is not like a direct question, it's a little open-ended, so you will find a lot of flexibility if you like shift a little towards things like metaphors and symbolism. Okay, so as long as you keep your model interesting, because there's a lot of pillars when it comes to these kind of questions. One is the way you write, one is the way you represent, then there is the real stuff like neatness overall, use, choice of material, then there is concept development. So all of these things get graded. It's not like you got the color psychology right so you won the game. So just make sure that you have enough time to balance out all of this. So key here again, guys, is planning, and that is why I'm spending so much time emphasizing that plan right before you start your model, so that on the way you guys won't have like a bumpy ride. Because I've seen certain people come back and then decide, oh, let me just like throw away like 20 minutes of what I did and let me just start from scratch. I've seen that happen. So it's all about planning it right. And always I've seen, even with myself, back when I was attempting all of these exams, I've had a certain plan in mind, but like in the middle, I usually have like a eureka moment where I think like, okay, maybe I can do this. And you can always add that into, like, it's not like you have to restrict yourself in any certain way, or like this is not like a template you have to follow. But I'm always saying that it kind of like helps you out. So this one was quite tricky. Next one was like make a 3D model based on the word generosity. And I took a while trying to figure out like an example, because it's such a vague word, like generosity. And Google is not going to help you in your exam center either. So I thought about this movie Wall-E. Most of you all must have watched it. Come on, everyone must have watched it. But like in that, the plot revolves around this plant, this tiny sapling that the robot finds in a post dystopian world after humans have left the polluted earth. So it's like kind of like the plant symbolizes the final ray of hope of life coming back to earth. And sorry for spoiling, but like in the end, this plant grows into a tree and it kind of gives back to humanity. It kind of gives back, and this kind of represents how mother nature is, and the generous nature of mother nature. So if I was writing this exam, I would go with this concept, I would go with this theme and this write up, and just create like a pretty 3D tree or something, and go with that. So this is how you approach. I'm not gonna show you a tree. I'm not gonna show you like this. I might even not make a tree, but like this is the concept for me. So this is like the groundwork, right? And then you can build on that. You can make anything over that. So this is how you approach questions like this when it's so vague. Next, okay. So we'll move on to the next day, 4th April. Um, This one was a little easier for me to decipher personally, but let's just go through the questions. Question one, make a headgear for comic icon based on the character. And then they give the characters Harry Potter, Batman, and Chota Bheem. And then the next question is make a 3D model depicting, again, fire, space, water. abstract. It's a little open-ended. So let's jump into the first question first. So the Harry Potter, Batman, and Chota Bheem. I bet at least 40 out of 60 at least students might make the hat, right? And or something of that sort. But I really suggest that you really don't, unless your modeling skills are so good that it looks literally like something from the plot. Even then, you wouldn't get grades for ideation or thinking out of the box. So that is something. And then there's Batman and Chota Bheem. So let's go on one by one. Headgear design, there are a few basic things because this is a repetitive question. It's come again and again, okay, over the years. So one is stability, like how you place it. It shouldn't be a flimsy thread or something, okay? It should be something solid. So the base, maybe you could start off with whatever you're creating. You could start off with like a pretty solid card or cardboard material. You can make a base and then build your headgear over that. Always, again, if you have time, always find time actually for a good sketch, so that you can, the sketch is not really to show the examiner, but to, for yourself to plan, this is how it should look like in the end, so that after all this work and time ticking, you don't get disappointed. Because even as a third year industrial design student, for me, if I don't plan properly, it will not look what I imagined in my brain to be. So always sketch, okay, and find time for it, but not a lot of time. It shouldn't be more than a 1 minute sketch. It's a quick rough thumbnail. So first one, Harry Potter. Okay, the aesthetic is obvious, and the color scheme you can get from that. The characters, it's from our childhood, we all know. So something of that sort. And you know, you could think about certain aspects of it, or maybe you can even think about a certain part of the story where a certain character would have used this headgear. It doesn't have to, it never really has to be an actual thing that was in like the book or the movie, but it's something that, you know, you could incorporate and you could talk about that too. That will make things really interesting. But the whole key point here to notice that when you look at the headgear, without even reading your extract or without reading your concept write up, the examiner should understand that okay, this is Harry Potter. So you could go for all those elegant designs, those gothic vibes, that kind of color scheme, and you could even draw inspiration from a few of the motifs that appear in the book or are described in the story again and again. Or you know, have, or you could even pick a particular house, you know, go for like Gryffindor or like a Slytherin house, and then you could go into that theme. So there's a lot of exploration that can be done here, and Potterheads out there just go crazy with it. Yeah. Moving on, Batman. So personally a DC fan, this is quite cool that they actually like put this here as a headgear. It would be cool if you guys could get out of the headspace of Batman's original outfit and think in a more, you know, cooler sense. I mean, it is very cool, but think in a different sense, because there are certain aspects of color psychology and shapes that you can stick to stick with this aesthetic over here. One is you could use extremely triangulated forms. You could use the bat wing form. You could draw inspiration from that, because when you do that, there's a lot to talk about also, and that is what you're going for over here. Batman always has this very mysterious, sleek vibe going on, and it's really cool. And it has this very hoarse, really cool thing going on. So, you know, when you look at that headgear, it should whisper to you, I am Batman. I can't do that smoldering thing, but that's what should really go on when you look at that. And always, you know, go for that angular aesthetic. And that is one of the few things that you can stick to in this form. Very important. Moving on, Chota Bheem. So if you guys have annoying little siblings who watch TV all day. You might be familiar with this show. Quite cool show actually, but if you have to find like a headgear for it, it would be a little Indian ethnic. It could be a little bold, okay? And the colors used in the show are very, very bright, very, very loud, bold colors. So you could go for that. You know, you could like make anything from like a cool laddu dispensing headgear for Chota Bheem and write about that. You know, things like that. That is how you should think, because this is a cartoon, right? This is like a kids thing, and it's like really there's a humor in it, there's like morals in it and stuff also. But you have to remember, in the end of the day, it's a kids thing, so you can go crazy with the concept, like how I said, like a laddu dispensing headgear. So there's like a lot to talk about also. There's a lot of color sense that you can use while creating your product, and it should be very loud. So you can draw inspiration from, you know, all of those Indian styles also, and that will be a very interesting take on headgear designed for someone in this Chota Bheem aesthetic or theme. Yeah. So this was the second part of the second day, and these are the 3D abstract three forms that we had to talk about. So first one was fire. Again, it's quite abstract. So I just found a few images that might resonate with y'all. But over here, the whole point is to basically communicate the nature of fire. It doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be like you create something that looks like a bonfire. Please no, that is not what we want. Okay, what we want is something that communicates a particular aspect of fire, or not just one, maybe multiple, or you know, you look at that and you get the vibe of fire. So how do you do that? You write fire and then you mind map again. So there's dynamic, there's loud, there is warm. So that kind of, obviously the color scheme is like very obvious. There is mysterious, there is, or even you can even go for certain things like certain abstract words like rising or twirling, and that is why I really like this image kind, because it kind of resonates with both those words, you know. Or you could even go into fire symbolism. So what happens then? You create a phoenix, you know. I mean, it is a quite complex form to achieve, but if you're confident, that is really cool. Or you know, something from your childhood that represents fire. So those are the kind of things, you know, you don't have to stick with fire. You can like diverge into a lot of very interesting things. And what happens is, again, there's a lot of exploration you can do, and there's a lot of talking you can do to back up your model, and that really helps to like make you stand apart. But again, when you're doing these kind of questions, go crazy with the concept, but also be very careful to make sure that your model is quite a solid thing. It looks impressive. It's not like some small thing, you know. I mean, it's not about like it's a small model, it's not good. That's not what I meant. But it should be as good as your write-up. So just be very careful about that, because what most students tend to do is they have an awesome concept, they have an awesome write up, but in an open-ended thing, their model is just meh. So just make sure that you have a solid model. Always, you can always sketch here also. Always helps in spending. It's not even like, you know, you're spending 1 hour. You're investing 1 minute of your time into a sketch, so that you're like getting like a bomb product. That is the point here. So moving on, again, I am not showing any models really. I'm just talking about your flow or your thought process, or how to really break down these questions. So I guess this was personally my favorite choice out of like 2 days, because space, first thing, it's open ended. Second thing, pun intended, but it gives you a lot of space for thinking. Okay, so there's a lot of different meanings to space. There's space design also in NIFT questions, and then there's space as in a 3D space. Then there is the galactic space. Then there is the metaphorical reference of a space. There's multiple ways in which you can approach this world and create like a 3D model for it. So I think that is where it really caught my attention, because there's a lot of exploration I personally sat down and did for this particular word. So one thing, the easiest thing you could do is like make a lot of cubes and suspend them and make a form and talk about it. You can go full on poetry about it. It could be the dystopian future of humankind and how humankind will be living in boxes. There's actually a science fiction novel written about it. A few of you all who are interested can go and read about it, but like, let's move on. So another concept that I came up with is very simple, optical illusion and space. So how do you work with that? Maybe you could create a lot of 3D forms. It's easy. Everyone knows how to create cuboids and cubes on with paper and cardboard. And maybe you could draw such optical illusion things on the surface. Okay, and there's a lot to talk about in this. You could even go deep into a lot of metaphors if you want to. Then there is right side. Again, this is an optical illusion tiny model thing, but space design, or like, you could design something that takes up less space. These are, again, it's like you're diverging into a completely different field, and yet you're keeping things interesting and with the theme. So that is really something that people adore and people love to see in a design aspirant, because design is a field where you need to stick out, you need to stay out of the main flow or like the mediocre group. And thinking in these directions is really like it becomes a lifestyle. So again, this is just a cute 3D isometric render of space, but I really love this and just wanted to put it here to show, like, how your mind should go. It could be really cute, and this was my personal favorite. So this is a space design of a space which is space themed. So this is like pun over a pun over a pun, and it's really fun to talk about it. And I know this is a 3D render, but it's not really that difficult to replicate with cardboard and paper and whatever material is available in a situation test. So yeah, just wanted to end with a few notes, and that is just really pace out your exam, read your question multiple times. If you do have trouble deciphering English, like if English is not your strongest suit, always underline the keywords. For example, in the first question it said Met Gala, it said celebrity, it said female. So these are like three keywords, right? So you have to underline it so that you don't really miss out on a point and you don't make like a footwear for a male celebrity, you know so something like that. Like, because the first time I read it, I was thinking, oh my god, it'll be really cool if I create something for Flash. And then I read it again and I was like, oh, female. So just reread the question again and again. If you even if you're confident, please do underline it if you're like a little weak in your English. And don't do all the questions, read again. It's not all you mostly just have to make one model. Okay, and paste it out, plan, ideate, sketch, check the time. How often do you guys check your watch? Or I don't think mobile phones are available, but a clock. Be shameless. Okay, call the examiner and be like, hey, how much time do I have left? Can you please tell me? Can you please let me know? Just be very shameless and ruthless about that, because time is of the essence, and I really want you guys to be aware of how much time you have left, so that last minute you don't mess up, last minute you don't miss out on writing a really good write up, because trust me, it is so fundamentally important. But in the end, it's it's a creative process. Okay, it's NIFT ka exam, and it's something that all of you all have been dreaming of, right? So have fun with it, don't forget to have fun with it. Okay, I know it's a little serious, but if you don't loosen up, if you don't have fun, you will not come up with something creative in the end. I know as a creative, fellow creative, that it is how things work. So you know you can tense out all you want, but like the day of the exam, just breathe, have fun, go read the question, do the thing, make a cool bomb model, and then walk out of that exam hall knowing that you've secured that rank. So yeah, that's it for today, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, Nandini, that was really nice session. I think there are a few questions that has already come up. The first
Okay.
one, I just read out one that I find quite interesting. Do you have any predictions for tomorrow's exam?
Predictions. Okay, so if I get that wrong, you all will fry me like what happened to that poor little octopus, right? So yeah, I really don't have predictions, but if you guys do look at the past papers, there is a particular set pattern, so you can expect that for sure.
Mm.
There will be like two questions, there'll be sub options within the questions, there will be a write up, that is for sure, and you will have at least one direct and at least one open ended question for sure. So that is something that will not change, it will stay the same. And most probably you'll have a product, headgear, accessory, handbag, something like that question, and also like a quite abstract question, because this pattern has been going on for years and I don't know if COVID pandemic is going to do anything about it. So yeah, let's just safe to assume, especially after reading these two papers also, that it's going to stay constant. But what exactly comes in the paper, good luck to you. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that kind of answers Pragya Gaur's question. There's another from Akshat Murli. I'm writing tomorrow. Tell write up twist. Okay, I'm not exactly understanding what Akshat wants to ask here. Probably Akshat, if you could be a bit more specific. But there is one question which is related to this write up that I had heard. So I would just ask you that. So what happens if they don't understand the meaning of a particular word, or such a scenario happens? What would you suggest, Nandini?
If you don't understand a particular, so if you don't, as in like you don't understand the English, like if you
Yeah.
don't understand the language, right, just it's safer not to go for that question, because that is the fundamental backbone of the question, right? So if you're not really understanding, because I understand where that's coming from, there are certain past papers where they have used complex words and
True.
those words have been the key. So and I don't think the examiner is going to help you out over there, right? So
Mhm.
if you really don't know, like if you have some idea and if you're confident, go for it, okay. But if you genuinely don't know, like for example the word generosity, right, if you didn't know,
Mm.
you should never like assume that it means something and like shoot your shot.
Mhm.
There are certain areas or there are certain aspects of the next NIFT exam where you can shoot your shot, but understanding every word of the question is so fundamentally important. That's why I've even mentioned earlier, underline words when you're reading the question, underline the keywords and make that like so imprinted in your brain before you start ideating. So it's very important that you know what they're talking about. If you don't, please don't attempt that question, go for the next one. That is the safest thing, because I don't want you spending so much time and effort on creating a wonderful model and writing like a beautiful write-up all for nothing, you know.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Great. There's one question regarding write up. Okay. They're asking for any last tips, last minute tips for write up. I think these are students who are writing tomorrow.
Okay. Last minute tips for write-up, you all can always go back and watch my video on last minute tips for write-up, but I'll just skim through a few points. Just
Great. Great. Okay.
time management, because every time I've held like a mock situation test for a few students, they've always started writing after I set time up. So, so don't do that, please. Okay, always write with time. I mean, and then So you have time for writing that's set apart, and it should be like at least 7-8 minutes long, because it should be neat. All right. And if it's like a random piece of paper, don't fold it, don't bend it, don't crumble it. Draw a neat margin with a paper, with a pencil and a scale, and then write on it. Don't scribble. And if you do have genuinely bad handwriting like I do, take your time. And if you genuinely are super scared about your English, or if you're extremely weak in English, you can always bullet point, okay? But I think the best policy is to balance out the bullet points and the writing. So it's like, you can, when you're writing the concept and you're writing the color psychology, you write in paragraphs. And when you're talking about like functionality or something, could be like bullet point, okay, like strap for this, this for this, this for this, and then again you can go for paragraphs and you can close it. But that is another point. Write neatly, because these guys have so many papers to read. So if your paper is a little messy physically, also if there's smudges or like ink stains, it's not pleasing, and they'll just like not want to read it at all. And you don't want their mood or personal bias affecting your rank, you know. So always be very neat. And I guess that's it overall. Just make sure that you have not just I made this because of this, because of this reason, or like, you know, you have this superficial opening statement that everyone has. Make sure beyond that you also write about certain aspects like color psychology. Make sure you write about form. Make sure you point out that I did this for this, because some 90% of the time you guys do make those little cute little cool features inside whatever you've created, okay? Like there are certain things that you've put your thought into, and you've added an extra cool thing in your 3D model or whatever that it is, but the examiner doesn't notice it. But if it's in your write-up, the examiner will actually go back to your product and be like, oh, there's this extra feature, okay, cool, you know. So always make sure that you write everything, don't miss out on anything. And don't think that you need to know fancy English for a write-up. You don't. You just need English as a medium to communicate. Keep it simple, keep it neat, and just make sure you have time to communicate properly, because that is the whole point of write up. It's not like evaluating if you know English only then you can study in NIFT. No, okay. So just don't worry, chill out, time it out, and write. That's all.
Okay, great. I think that was a really elaborate answer that you had given. I think most of the questions and all have been answered. Thank you, Nandini. Thank you once again for this lovely session. It's been a nice journey with you throughout, from the start of the situation test preparations, and now they're going to write the exam. I hope it will be fruitful for everyone. So, all the best, everyone. All the best.
Good luck, everyone.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck to everyone who is going to write the exams tomorrow and day after tomorrow. Okay. And if there are any questions, queries, and all, please do not hesitate to shoot. Either you can post below this particular video, the recorded session would be available, or you can contact us at 8086 111 216. Okay. So that would be it, everyone. Thank you. Until we meet in the next session. See you again. Thank you.